Hello, thanks for coming. My name's Eileen Delahunty. I am a longtime producer at New York Public Radio, and I'm currently the interim general manager for WQXR. I like to say I started at New York Public Radio when LaGuardia was mayor. So for those of you that know your New York history, know that's a really long time. May or may not be true. But yes, I've been producing programs and live events there for 30 some odd years.
And I just found out she was an intern in high school at WBCN in Boston for the morning show.
Yeah, I worked with Charles Aquadero, who was a big Boston legend. In high school, went away to college, came back and worked with him for another 3 years. And when I was at WBCN, the rock station in Boston, they said to me, "You sound like you belong in public radio." Right? I challenged them on that and found a job at WNYC and moved to New York.
Hello, everyone. My name is McLaughlin. I'm the program director of WFUV, which is actually where I began as a college student at Fordham University. It's my third stint at WFUV, and in between there, I was part of the team that built the original Sirius XM, Sirius satellite radio channel platform. And I also spent time at iHeartRadio helping to build the digital platform for iHeart, every station that they have that's on the web and mobile side of things. And also spent some time at Amazon Music, where I helped launch Amazon Music Unlimited, which was their Spotify competitor, before coming back to WFUV as a program director. So grateful to be in this room and grateful to be on this panel with Eileen and Mike.
So real briefly, why did they do this? Well, the reasons were quite simple. They acknowledged a shrinking audience and revenue, changes in music consumption, and the idea that rising tide, lifts all boats. These stations cover a lot of people. In the New York MSA, the three New York stations, BGO, FUV, and QXR, reach over 676,000 people. And between them, they have over 240,000 P1s. And there you can see their signal coverage areas. WSHU's signal is not overlaid there because, it's two different books. So that's from the New York book. Rich is going to talk about why and how this came together more thoroughly.
Yes, thinking a little bit about the genesis of the collaborative and also the intentions that we have around it. Really, this collaborative came around the idea of this opportunity to share both share in values and share in our services as well. Despite the fact that these four stations have very different genres of music that they focus on, we do share values, and those shared values are music, accessibility, and service. So because we have those shared values, we anticipated that we would also be able to share in some of the services that the four individual stations provide. The intention around it is to leverage our geographical proximity and influence. The four stations have quite a bit of that, and we're all close together. Another intention is to develop new and innovative ways to serve our audiences, and we've been able to implement some of that. We'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. And also to serve as something of a framework for other potential collaborations for different public radio stations in different cities across the country. So that was the genesis and some of the intentions around it as well. Some of the focus areas, what we chose to prioritize: strategic planning and audience development. That was a big and remains a big aspect of this collaboration. Thanks to the public media company, they really helped us focus on our strategy, and Paragon really provided a comprehensive digital review and audit, and also membership data analysis for us. So the intention there being to understand our digital strategies individually as stations and as a unit in a completely different way, and with much more depth than we ever thought about that before. And then there's also the membership cultivation aspect of this, which is enhancing the relationship between public media and its supporters. So that's a little bit about the genesis of the collaborative and also some of the intentions and goals that we've been trying to achieve along the way.
This is the group in New York. We met, I think, late April, maybe, or late February.
We all have faces for radio.
Yeah, yeah, there we are.
March, yeah.
In the New York Public Radio facility. And just so you know and understand, this is the first of its kind. Now, this has never happened. You know, I mean, I've been consulting radio stations for 40 years, most of that only public radio. And it was really weird, I have to say, to have 4 competing radio stations in one room, sort of talking about how they might do things together, when I'm used to being in one room, you know, working for them and trying to maximize our audience share and our revenue. And it was very cool. It was also very clear that this group of people was motivated by a spirit of cooperation. I was really surprised how quickly the walls came down and how they just opened their minds and their books. I think all realized as we were going through this grant started at the beginning of the year before, you know, the real final action took on defunding, and it was a slow build, as you know, over a period of months. And we just found ourselves at a critical time when everybody started thinking about, well, what's going to happen? Well, we're already kind of gaming it. We were in the middle of the process when all that happened. So the timing actually ended up being serendipitous and very cool. So when they got together and in that room on that day, and we'd had calls before then, but you know how it is when you finally get in a room, that's when things get done. They decided really prior to that meeting that there were 4 strategic goals: to grow audience, membership, revenue, and sustainability. Very quickly, they struck that down to 1. That, you know what, the one thing we should focus on is audience growth. And the caveat to that is we will do that through collaborative events. And so events kind of moved to the top of the collaborative list. When we talked about content, we talked about other parts of the organization, it was harder to think about, well, what could we do together? But when you think about events, it kind of became like, oh, okay, we can do that. And then, you know, in the spring, late spring, defunding happened. And all of a sudden they decided, you know what, we're going to bring back that sustainability goal. So yes, we're going to finish the events collaboration that we started, but now we're going to talk about shared services and collaboration. And so at the end of the day, the final goals were 2 of the 4, to grow audience through collaborative events and to grow sustainability.
So the one thing we know as music stations, and especially public music stations, is how important we are to our audience. We know that our audiences come to us, I'm preaching to the choir here, I know this, because we have hand-curated playlists, and we have hosts who know how to present in a very special way and have a very special connection to the audience. And that's true for all 4 stations. So as we talk about, you know, keeping our audience and building our audience, I think we know that we need to lean into those distinctions from streaming services. And another way that we are very similar, even though our music is different, our different genres, is that connection, as I said, to the audience. And I think we realize we can build on those strengths, especially together. We'll talk a little bit more about what the events were. But the other idea is that we all have a connection, a really strong connection to organizations in New York City. We all have really strong partnerships. I know for WQXR, sorry, I won't hit my mic, I should know better. Like Carnegie Hall is one of our big partners. We do a lot of events there. We have events in Central Park. We do a summer series every year. I have collaborations with smaller venues too around the city. WBGO has a really strong partnership with all the jazz venues around the city. And I know FUV, man, I can't believe the events that you do. They're a role model for how to do events throughout the city. So there's about 100, we figured there's about 150 arts organizations that we partner with, music, live theater, and museums. Some of these are paid sponsors. So how can we capitalize on each of our individual relationships and sponsorships with these institutions? It's funny, you know, I live in New Jersey, and I got an email today from the Montclair Art Museum, and I looked at the sponsor of the event. It was WFUV, for crying out loud. So we have those. That's just built into our DNA, is these relationships with strong arts organizations.
One side note is that WFUV and WBGO were Paragon clients prior to this, and we had done market research for them. And I looked at their studies, and both of them were between 40 and 50%, excuse me, 40 and 60% of their audiences, not just their members, but their audiences had attended one station event a year. So we knew factually that these audiences drive people to events.
Yes, and so as to not bury the lead, we thought we'd talk about lessons learned early on and then work backwards from that. I would say the overarching theme and the overarching lesson learned is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that involves and entails a few different things. One, as Mike just mentioned, events, agreeing that events would serve as the tie that binded all of these stations together. Earning trust, which we really, that took time. And I'd say it was after we were really dealing with some of the defunding challenges, that really helped bring us together. And I think in a way, it was moving a little bit more slowly in the beginning, and it really helped expedite that. And there really is a high level of trust between the four stations. Again, as I mentioned early on at the onset, that shared vision and those shared values really come into play. And it was a big priority for us to hit, sorry to use a baseball analogy, but I'm prone to those, hitting singles versus trying to hit home runs. I think I found in my experience that everyone, sometimes when you're dealing with these types of partnerships or collaborations, you try to hit that grand slam and you end up being unable to accomplish anything at all. So for us, it was about putting together, so building that momentum and hitting singles and then growing that and building momentum upon that. So those are some of the lessons learned. And again, I'd say the overarching theme there is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts for these four stations.
So one of the ideas we had initially was to do some joint events. That seemed like the easiest win for us. I'll talk in a little bit about the Tiny Desk concert that we did together. But we have a lot of opportunities. We each individually do our events. At WQXR, one of our big projects out in the community is kids fairs. We do 2 to 3 a year. My coworker, Christine Hershkovitz, is the lead producer on those, and they're really amazing. We've done them at Brooklyn. We've done them at the museum, Children's Museum there. We've done work with, we just recently did one in Newark at NJPAC. And BGO helped us out and helped promote that because it was basically in their backyard. We've done them in Queens. And these are events that, again, we're trying to build audiences, and you start this young, it's a good way to start. We do instrument petting zoos, we do arts and crafts, we have demonstrations of dance and composition workshops. We have performances from lead New York organizations. New York Film partners with us on these events. And, but the idea was that this would be a really easy event for us in the future to work on together. We could bring in all of the stations to easily do a kids event throughout the city. We're also thinking about the Public Radio Music Day. Maybe that would be a way, an event to bring people together who have maybe an allegiance to one station or another, but then learn about another station. So that's a benefit of these joint events is to really just expose people to a new audience or to a new genre, but also to a new station. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Oh, Tiny Desk, I'll talk about it now. So Tiny Desk approached WNYC, our sister station, a while back, because they do these Tiny Desks on the road around the country, and they were coming to Brooklyn. And it was 3 bands, all, pop music or contemporary music. And they wanted WNYC to be the sponsor. And Mike said, I think we should get involved with this too. So I reached out to Tiny Desk and said, can we have some space at the Tiny Desk as well? And they opened it up to us. And what it meant was we were able to bring hosts from each of our stations there, and we were able to have some presence in the lobby. We had tables there. We had some swag. But what was really nice is, especially with the hosts being able to introduce the bands, they could talk about our collaboration. SHU started the evening off. Randy Kay from SHU was fantastic, and she talked about the importance of public radio. And each of us had a chance to talk about public radio's influence within the music ecosystem. The people that came to that event may have known about NPR, and they just assumed that we're all, NPR, what does that mean exactly with your music stations if you don't carry NPR music all the time or NPR news all the time? But it gave us an opportunity to talk about that we're publicly funded, we're member funded, and that we are really important in terms of music in your communities. So for WFUV and WQXO, we share a host. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He was one of the introducers, and he talked about all the collaboration between the stations in terms of hosting, in terms of events, and it was just a really nice platform for us to talk about how important we are in the ecosystem of New York City. So. Oh, and I must say, you have the best swag.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, our swag. I mean, we have tattoos. We have composer tattoos. I can wear a Bach thing on my sleeve, but man, you guys
All
really
credit for
killed
that
it.
goes to Janine Schadelman. She's our director of promotion and marketing. I take no credit for that, but yeah, thank you. We have a great team that provides a lot of swag. So if you're ever at a WFUV event, we'll have a lot to give you. We want to talk a little bit about the big tent strategy for these joint events that we pursued and we're still pursuing. Our first goal was to select a large cultural event that we could all participate as part of. It didn't have to be, and in fact, we prefer it to not be a music event, because it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense for 2 classical stations that are part of the collaborative to be at, say, just an event that leans heavily on for FUV, or for FUV to be at a classical event. Not to say that there couldn't be benefits to that, but we didn't want to preach to the choir that already exists for the stations. We wanted to go out there and pursue new potential audience members, and we felt like a non-music event provides an opportunity to educate the New York listening audience as to what we do, and we felt that was a good approach. We also, and again, this will come up often, we wanted to use this as a potential framework or template for other stations in other cities to pursue and to look at and to build off of. And some of the Big Tent strategy priorities that we set. One was tapping the infrastructure and the audience of each individual station for the good of the group. And again, that comes back to the whole is greater than the sum of its parts philosophy. Also, leveraging our individual relationships for the good of the group. And also to come at it with a high level of confidence, because when you're looking at the stations that are part of this collaborative, it brings a lot of promo power between all of the different audiences that we have, especially when we combine them and bring them together. And so those were some of the key priorities and goals for us as we looked at that strategy and created tactics around trying to implement it successfully.
Ugo, if you could scroll down on the slide notes for Eileen, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So I like, we always say this, that this project is really the greater than the sum of its parts. And that's true with some of the ideas that we have for artist-friendly programs along the consortium. WBGO has something that they call Artist Support Action Program, and it's basically giving airtime to promote artists who have upcoming gigs. So they've been doing this for a while, and it's really helped the jazz community in New York and helped them sell some tickets. For WQXR, we have something called Project Airlift, and this is started back in the COVID days. We wanted to support the smaller organizations, mostly the BIPOC organizations that were struggling during COVID. So we gave some free airtime to give some love to them and eventually for their events and help promote the work that they're doing. And so I think, as I mentioned before, we could definitely explore collaborations on kids and families as part of what we're going to be working on in the future. And we can use some of these programs that we've already done as a model for those programs. The other thing we're thinking about is trying to find the value for our audience in terms of promoting concerts together, mostly in a digital form, to do newsletters together for upcoming music events throughout the city. It could be, logistically, we're still trying to figure out how that might work. I think we each have our own calendars of events, but as we found out through some of the studies, people would really enjoy knowing more about different genres and different events coming up. So at some point, we're going to have to figure that out, Rich,
Yeah.
how we do that.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the content, shared services that the 4 stations are involved in, and I want to touch on the content aspect of this. So Paul Cavalcante is one of my favorite DJs in the New York market, and has been very well established. Paul is on and has been on 3 of the 4 stations as part of the collaborative here. So WBGO picked up New Standards with Paul Cavalcante. That show was originally on WNYC. Paul also hosts Cavalcade on WFUV every Sunday evenings, and he's a host on the weekends on WQXR. So and that wasn't, Paul was working with WFUV and QXR, but not with BGO prior to this partnership. Now he's on 3 of the 4 stations in the collaborative. In addition, Delphine Blue, who's the host of a WFUV show called The Whole Wide World, has now started a show on WBGO called Delphine's Delights. And so when we talk about shared services, that is part of it as well on the content side, and we're thinking about additional ways to share content. We'll touch on some of those as well, but those are a few examples of some shared services on the content side.
We call Paul the poster child for this project because he is on 3 of the 4 stations. Julie, I mean, if you need him.
No, I think that's it for Paul. We've shared him enough.
What was really great, or is really great about this project is some of the research that was done for us. Paragon came up with a very detailed online member survey for all 4 stations. It was, I don't know how many questions were on that survey.
It was 20 minutes long.
It was 20 minutes long. That's what we sent out an email to our membership and said, please consider taking this survey. And by the way, it's 20 minutes long. Manage expectations. Our goal was to get 300 members at least to fill out the survey, and we got those pretty quickly. And the idea was to figure out with this survey what their awareness was for all the stations, all 4 stations, what their listening habits were, if they had a preference for music genres, and what their membership commitment was, how often they committed, how did they commit, and then what was their preferred method for financial support. And we also asked them about the likelihood of supporting a collaborative effort between the station, if they would be interested in supporting these joint events that we do together. If they're interested in a collaborative music app, that was another question, and the interest in the shared calendar, as I mentioned before. So those were some of the big takeaways from that membership survey. It was really helpful.
There were 3 forms of collaborative research. The first was from CDP. The 4 stations agreed to aggregate their membership data. So they all put it into one bucket, and CDP did a lot of analysis, which I'll talk about briefly. Paragon did the membership studies individually for each of the 4 stations, but it was the same questionnaire. And then we put the results together to find out what we could do collaboratively with membership and fundraising. And then the third research component was Michelle conducted digital audits for all 4 stations. And that really tore apart, all their digital platforms so that we could figure out what we could connect between them. I won't go into this, but I guess there were 75,000 members across the 4 organizations. They identified overlap members, difference in giving habits, and member giving comparisons. And we'll look at just a few of the things that we could share. It's somewhat proprietary, but the stations agreed to show you the next 3 slides.
So the biggest takeaways for me is that WBGO, and just so you know, when they were getting the information, it was the combined stations for WNYC and WQXR. So that's why it's at New York Public Radio. Hopefully at some point we want to get just the WQXR numbers. But the takeaways for me from this is that WBGO has the most donor overlap across the 4 stations, and I'm really curious about that. And I guess jazz people are a little bit more eclectic in their music tastes, maybe. I'm not sure. We also realized that, maybe is it the next slide? There we go. The major donors, we consider those the $1,000 donors and over. The most overlap between those donors was WBGO and WFUV. BGO was 10% and FUV 5%. And then for revenue, the big takeaways, that FUV had the highest major donors, but they're all pretty similar. They're all, did I get, BGO, okay, has the highest, sorry. BGO has the highest percentage of revenue across there.
I think that one of the other takeaways was the overlap donors. Donors who are members of both stations, more than one, give more than the non-overlap donors to each station. So they're Uber members. And for the first time in public radio, we can see how members migrate across station member bases. All right, so the digital audits, I briefly described, it's a platform analysis, so it's a deep dive into websites, newsletters, apps, socials, and anything that's not over the air, essentially. We came up with platform-specific recommendations for each of the 4 stations to improve their distribution, expand their digital reach, and identify some growth opportunities. And then at the end, which we just completed yesterday, we came up with what the 4 stations could do to work together on digital things. And I jumped too quickly there, Rich.
Yeah, and the information from the review, the digital review and audits that Michelle and the team at Paragon performed for all 4 stations individually were, speaking for WFUV, the most in-depth analysis of our digital platforms, and that included everything from the strengths of WFUV in terms of what we're doing digitally right now across our platforms, the weaknesses. It pinpointed areas for improvement, and not only did Paragon perform these audits for WFUV, but also WQXR, WBGO, WSHU. So each of the individual stations were able to take their specific information, review it, take a look at what's working, take a look at what wasn't, and then we came together as a group, and it's about like comparing notes. What do we all share in common? What strengths do all 4 stations share digitally? What weaknesses? What stations have certain strengths, whereas other stations have weaknesses that those stations could help inform to turn those weaknesses into strengths for those stations. And this is all information that would not have been acquired otherwise. And that's not something right now in terms of the results of that. Well, the results of the audit speak for themselves, but how we're able to take those results and move them forward in a meaningful way and implement change, we're still working through that. That's actually a credit to the work that Michelle did in collecting all of that information, because it's so in-depth. But to be able to look at that individually as a station and then compare notes with the other stations was and has been incredibly worthwhile, and something that we're still going over now and discussing.
So on the positive side, what we learned was that all 4 stations from the digital audits, what we learned was that they share active, loyal audiences on social media. They all had strong newsletter lists, but the gaps that we found, the opportunities, were that they lacked short-form video content, and they had not maximized the use of hosts and personalities to help deliver their messages. So both of those gaps represent opportunities to showcase the voices of each station, but also to, as we said at the very beginning, lift all ships. Rich is going to take us through some potential collaborations. This is very early thinking. Again, we just finalized this yesterday, and Rich is going to talk to you about some of the things that might be possible with digital collaborations.
So cross-promotion of content, you see here, sharing music, cultural, and news content across stations and platforms. It's a really big benefit to us that WBGO does jazz, WFUV is AAA, QXR and SHU are classical, but they serve different parts of the New York City market. So sharing that music, cultural, and news content is really beneficial, because it's information that are strengths for some stations, but not necessarily others. Highlighting local culture with weekly collaborative posts, leveraging our newsletters by including personalized event recommendations, and also a shared video strategy. So co-producing short-form edutainment, as we called it, and also using hosts as the face of this content. Not only, as we mentioned, Paul Cavalcante and Delphine Blue, but other hosts that are on WSHU and BGO and QXR and FUV as well. So the cross-promotion of content and the shared video strategy are 2 big aspects of that. As our host-led engagement, like developing a recurring series, developing a regional, like Meet the Host series, so that's a big part of it, and also community and user-generated content activation. These are all potential collaborations that we're looking at, and again, going back to that, the takeaways of trying to hit singles before we start hitting home runs, it's really picking one aspect of one potential collaboration, 2 potential collaborations, and moving those forward, growing that momentum, and then building upon it for all of the different stations in the collaborative.
The third piece of shared research were the membership studies that we mentioned earlier. Again, there was 1,200 people in the sample divided across the 4 stations. We were looking at interest, point blank, are you interested in this type of collaboration? What are your motivations for supporting a joint initiative like this? What would be your preferred donation methods and desired offerings that the collaboration could provide you? One thing, the top line answer was that 6 out of 10 of members of these 4 stations said that they would be likely to provide a separate and additional donation to a collaborative effort. So 6 out of 10 members of 4 radio stations who are already members of at least one said, if you guys got together and did stuff that I like, I'll give the collaboration money too. And that's a big deal. We knew that these were big supporters already. 61% of these members had made a contribution to one of these 4 stations. And 91% of the members had made a contribution to a different local charity or a nonprofit. So these are civically minded people who want to help the community that they live in. We're going to go through the results pretty quickly here. Some of the other key questions that we talked about were motivations. What would motivate you to give to a collaboration like this? Community support, transparency, music variety, supporting the 4 stations together, exclusive events, and incentives. And the preferred donation methods were, sustaining at 58%, a joint fund drive, if the stations were to do a joint fund drive, which they are talking about. 47% would be interested in that. That would be over and above the individual station fund drives. And buying a ticket to some type of an event also came back very strong.
And yeah, the takeaway for me from the membership studies, we know that our listeners are passionate about music, but I really was very interested in the fact that they were supportive of the collaborative events. And I'm curious how that will pan out and as we move forward with this. The other percentage was the 63 that wanted to attend a music festival that would include a variety of genres, classical, jazz, and progressive alternative rock. We have talked about maybe within the next, probably in the spring, we're looking at maybe doing an event in the Bronx that would combine all of us. Venues being talked about, there's a good possibility, but I will put the test to the theory that people will come out for an event that will include all these different genres. So this slide, let's see, we have, the digital calendar too. I mentioned that before, and I think that's really important as people, I mentioned a kids fair that we did in Brooklyn. It's funny, we've done them there before, and the last year our attendance was 1,800 people came. We got a listing for the event, which we hadn't had before. It was actually in the New York Times. We had more than 3,000 people come to that kids fair. So a digital calendar where we could aggregate all of our different events and also things that are going out in the city, that would be a really good benefit to our members, and that's, or at least they say that's a good benefit. I think it would be.
So the top line results I think that are worth mentioning, that 7 out of 10 said they'd be interested in a new newsletter from the collaborative that highlights local artists and music events specifically. Roughly 6 out of 10 said they'd be interested in attending a music festival between the 4 stations. Roughly 6 out of 10 said they'd be interested in a digital calendar of live music events in the area. And roughly half of them said they'd be interested in a collaborative music events app, an app that aggregated all of those things.
So our future collaborations that we talked a little bit about, so we do want to grow the membership. That's priority for all of us, and also to keep us
employed.
Keep us employed, absolutely. Keep us going. The audience initiatives that we have through this collaborative have been helpful to know a little bit more about what they want from us and what's going to be moving the needle for them. I think what we can think about for future collaborations, we did talk about maybe doing kids fairs. We're talking about this event that will do a multi-platform music event somewhere in the city. But what's really possible about this in terms of sponsorship is that we each have our own sponsors. We each have people that are dedicated to what we're trying to do. But if we have an event that combines all of our audiences and presents these passionate music listeners, what would that mean to a sponsor? And I think that's yet to be determined. But it would be a great event for us to be able to see if we can sell that and then see what the revenue is from that kind of an event.
Yeah, and then growing the sustainability, that became a bigger part of the conversation and a bigger and bigger priority as time went on, throughout this collaborative, and that's a direct result of the challenges that we were facing with funding. So growing sustainability, so collaborative activities that increase operational effectiveness and also maximize operating expenses and contribute to that overall sustainability. One of the unintended consequences, very positive consequences of this collaborative, and it was just the timing of when it came together prior to when we were really diving into some of the funding challenges, just getting together on a bi-weekly basis to talk about what we were going through, each station individually, and discussing strategies and approaches and different ideas to moving forward and to sustaining, and to not only sustaining but also thriving. And I think that unintended consequence is something that I would throw out there to everyone in the room and everyone watching on the stream, which is we are better together. We are individually, it can be very challenging because we're all moving our individual station priorities forward together. But coming back to that, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We are WFUV, speaking for WFUV, we are a better station. We are a more effective station. We have better ideas. We are more confident in our future trajectory because of this collaborative, because of those conversations. And so I think moving forward, that's something that I'm going to be reaching out to other partners in other cities in our cohort that make sense, and just having those conversations, because we have to share this information, because that's, information is power, and that is going to be of the utmost importance as we move forward and grow and thrive together in public media, not only on the radio side, but on the television side as well.
And just to give you a specific example, the types of information they shared were names and numbers and emails of people who ran venues, who they sold sponsorships to. They laid it all on the table. There was no holding back, and that was a watershed moment.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with WFUV's member events that they do. We don't do that many member events, and they had just done a boat cruise in the Hudson River. And I called Chuck Singleton from FUV, and I said, Chuck, I would just want to get some more information about how this worked. How much did it cost to rent the boat? What were your ticket prices? He's like, call this person. She coordinated it. And within a day, I had all the information I needed. So if I wanted to do something similar, and what I loved was just that it was one outreach. I didn't have to do all the digging. I didn't have to try to figure out how to start from scratch. I mentioned this when we did the kids fairs. We wanted to make sure the Newark community knew about it because we hadn't done any events in Newark before. And I reached out to Steve at WBGO, and I'm like, Steve, help us out here. This is your backyard. He's like, oh, absolutely. So they did some announcements on their air and put it in the newsletter. That was the big push, was the newsletter. And it was really, really great to just feel like, okay, I have these contacts. It's so easy now.
Yeah, and the fact that, excuse me, our stations have been, all 4 stations have been in the New York market for a very long time, and this is the first time that we came together in this way, and to watch that trust grow, and and selfishly to be able to learn from all of the stations in the cohort, but like New York Public Radio, to learn from like the way that they approach what they do and their strategy and the way that they implement it is something that has really helped WFUV, and the same goes for WSHU and WBGO as well. So. To share that kind of information and have those kinds of conversations it's really been very positive and beneficial and super productive.
We're going to move fairly quickly through the next 2 slides because the last slide is the big idea that we want to share with you. But first, Eileen's going to address the member collaboration possibilities. So
looking at the CDP information, we know that there's some major donor overlaps. So I'm not exactly sure how we'll do that, but we'll look and see how we can mine that information. There's a lot of information that was received from CDP, but if we can mine how we get into the major donors, that will be super helpful. The video testimonies and engagement campaigns, the idea is that we can get testimonials from donors and talk about what the stations mean to them. That'll be important, and get the hosts involved with that too. If we can do some shared plan giving, again, this is to help preserve music in the area. If people want to help with the collaborative and do some shared fundraising, that's a fabulous thing. Virtual events, we're possibility of producing and sharing events with the goal to generate prospects for future development. So, and then the digital ad campaign. If we can work together to figure out how to target some digital money coming in, so for each of our platforms.
To keep you employed.
To keep us employed. That's if there's a theme here. We all need to be employed.
Yeah, and some of the unintended benefits, which I touched on a little bit earlier, but that open knowledge sharing, the programming, cross-pollination, the strategic support during a crisis, which sounds like, will we ever have to utilize that? Well, yes, in certain situations, kind of like the one we're in now. Event production, transparency, and overall cooperation. It was really interesting and has been interesting to watch from the start of the collaborative and the way that we approached, which is kind of like one step at a time and meeting each other halfway and then continuing to move forward. And now I think you probably get a sense that this is a pretty strong collaborative and a pretty strong bond. And sharing that information was felt a little bit like counterintuitive to kind of hand it over and know that some of your peers in the market are also going to have it. But we all did that, and we did that with an open mind and with a high level of trust, and we have all benefited from it. So,
a reminder, I don't know if there are any questions. If there are any in the app, we'll address them after the next slide, and you could always just stand up and shout too. So it's a small room. So early on, we came across what was sort of dubbed the big idea. The grant was only 6 months. And this is not the kind of thing that you can execute in that amount of time or with that amount of money. But basically the idea is to have an app that is not branded as the radio stations, but it's simply an arts and culture and music events app. It's an events app for the local market that's curated by each of the 4 radio stations. So each of the 4 radio stations would input their own calendar information, not just their events, but the things that matter to their audience, the things that matter to their psychographic life group. And so that's what would fill into each individual calendar, and then that would aggregate into this New York events app, name to be determined, but not the WBGO, WFUV, WQXR, WSHU app. And so
that's one naming idea.
We could do that.
Long.
But each station on the air would do their own events calendar, but would push people to the app for more. If you want to know everything that's happening in the tri-state area, go here, go to our website. Newsletters would push it out, socials would push it out, and obviously it would live on the website as well. And at every turn, what you're doing is promoting the app. And that app could also live and be embedded into each station's app with a tab for events. And so it could live externally as that standalone app. It could live within the station app. I fantasize about in the standalone app having a streaming button for each of the stations, a donation opportunity. And so it's just another way to extend the awareness and the service of public media across the market in a universe that's much bigger than just the listeners or members of these stations.
Doing this app, also, we're bringing together a community, a New York music community. As we've noticed in some of the membership and some of the data, that there is overlap in terms of interest in people wanting to know about the different genres and what's going on in the music industry in New York City. So I think an app like this would be beneficial, again, for the stations, but for the audience, and to help them know about all the great things happening in the New York City area and Connecticut.
Yes, and the app is the big idea, but below that, it very much ties into the digital audit and the membership analysis that we were talking about. So, which, that's going to allow each individual station to grow stronger with their own digital strategy and digital implementation, and then the overarching events app really kind of it does. I'll bring it back, and I'll end with makes like the whole greater than the sum of its parts. So each individual station gets better as a result of that digital audit and that membership analysis, and then we're able to bring it to the wider group in the form of something like an events app that would touch all of our listening audiences and in different ways based on the unique dynamics of each individual station and what they do. So.
As I'm sure you're thinking, that's a very sponsorable product.
Yes.
That app on each station and collaboratively.
All right, you guys, we are at time, but we do have 4 questions.
Yeah, Abby said we could
I'm going
go
to try
a
to
little
do
long.
a little long because we did start a smidge late.
Because there's a break,
folks,
so anybody that wants to hang.
I'm just going to acknowledge the time if folks need to skedaddle. But I'm going to start with the first one. How were the individual station brands able to stand out at a shared event?
Well, with Tiny Desk, we each had tables, and we each had there was 3 hosts, and we shared that stage together. So that's just one example. I think when this other venue that we're talking about doing a music event together will be probably spread out throughout the venue. I'm not going to say what it is because it's not confirmed. But we'd each have a little area, and maybe we'd have, I'd have a string quartet come in or something, and BGO would have a jazz, whatever, SHU would have.
New York Public Radio asked for a bigger table, twice the size of FUV's.
We did.
No.
I bullied them.
No, it was very
bullied
egalitarian. It's 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%.
How about in the visual materials, the branding on the creative assets, that kind of thing?
Did you see our logo at the beginning? It's one screen with all of our logos. We don't have a combined logo.
A combined
yet.
logo.
Yeah.
Another question was, when you share a host, do you also share, how come this is cut off? Do you also share their salary?
No, they're paid by the individual stations right now.
Okay. Do email subscribers have to proactively opt in, or can you automatically add them to the joint newsletter?
We don't have it yet.
Yep.
So, to be determined.
That would need to be part of the process of figuring out.
Yep.
Okay, final question. This is like the lightning round. How have you changed membership strategies based on the information you have received from CDP? And what were the results?
That's something that we've been digging into right now because that membership analysis, this collaborative has been over the last few months and goes into, I think, a month or so. So we just have the digital audits and the membership analysis is something we've just been digging into recently. And actually, we met yesterday to speak about how we're going to take that information and implement it in a meaningful way.
Does CDP give you recommendations?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep, actually that one slide about future digital or future membership collaborations, those were all recommendations from the CDP. Before we wrap up, if you have another question, that's cool, but thank you, Simone Lowen from Paragon. This presentation would not have happened without you. Thank you, Simone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for
all.
coming.
Thanks,
Thank you.